Thank you, Gail, and thanks, Deb, both of you and all of you for having me here tonight. It's really just a pleasure and an honor to share the evening with you. And thanks to you who are watching this. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us tonight. I know things will be a little bit different. I'm not going to talk a lot about plants, although we'll talk a little about plankton, which is a type of plant, of course. But I think this could be a lot of fun. So if you wouldn't mind humoring me by helping to stay a little bit engaged in the chat box, that would be great. Maybe just throw in there where you're from, whether you're from Olympia or somewhere a little farther away. I'm much more used to doing this type of talk with where I can see all your faces. So I'm going to imagine you all out there, eating dinner or maybe doing some yoga or the dishes and chiming in as you can. So thanks again for being here tonight. I want to thank Deb for that land acknowledgement earlier as well. I am currently sitting on the land of the Squaxin Island tribe who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and still do today. And I would really love if you know which native land you're on, if you want to pop that in the chat box. And if you don't know, it can be a fun research project of your own to figure it out. And Gail just put a really cool link in the chat to a website that's a mapping project of Indigenous lands around the world. And so that's one option of trying to figure out whose land you're on if you're not Indigenous on your own land. I think that Indigenous knowledge is so incredibly important when we talk about climate change, and following the leadership of Indigenous folks is going to be really helpful as we meet the challenges ahead of us. And I'd like to say just right off the bat that I'm not here to convince anyone that climate change is real. I'm going to take this from the trust that we are all kind of on the same page with this, that we all love this planet and we love the beauty and the bounty that it gives us, and that we want to keep it habitable for our great-great-grandchildren's children and all the plants and animals that are living on this beautiful planet. So this is really all about art and the power of art, particularly collaborative art, to create change. I have found collaborative art to be just the most amazing tool to helping us to move out of places where we feel stuck into places where we can actually take action in the world. What I would love to do more than anything tonight would be to work with you on an art and action project. But since I can't do that with this format, I'm just going to tell you some stories about some different projects. And, maybe I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And we'll just kind of take it from there. And I'm not going to give a full on chronology of my work or anything, but just a snapshot. So feel free to check out my website for more work. My website's actually, let me put up a slide real quick here. You can see my website on the bottom is just simply www.carrieziegler.com. And you can also follow me on social at Carrie Ziegler Art. So I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between sharing images and just talking. And I've got a few movie clips to share as well later on. But I wanted to just say in a few words as possible what it is that I do in this world. And so what I love to do the most is I love to do these large scale, multifaceted art and action projects, working with hundreds, sometimes thousands of individuals. And when we do this, we usually focus the project around a different relevant social or environmental justice issue, whether that's water quality or plastic bags in the ocean or climate change. And I do workshops about where we really delve into these topics, and then people make art in response to that. And so I like to take that art then and create a public art piece as a way to both raise awareness around these topics, to help the people who were involved in creating them to have a voice and a way to share this knowledge themselves, and to inspire change in the people who see them. So, but I didn't always know how to do that. Nobody taught me how to do that. I didn't actually grow up thinking that being an artist was something that was even a real thing. I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, and I have my grandfather was a farmer and my dad was a carpenter, and art was not really something that was a part of my life back then, very minimally. But what I did get was a really great I really got to learn how to use tools really well, which has served me very well over the years. Building houses with my dad was very helpful with that. He's an excellent teacher. So I did eventually study art a little bit in college, but my background is actually as a naturalist and environmental educator. And so for you who love plants out there, I'm totally right there with you. I was a student at Evergreen, and I just fell in love with ethnobotany and like how people use plants. And I've spent a lot of time in the woods and in the prairies, just, finding plants. And my daughter, who's 5 now, ever since she was 2, she's been pointing out all the native plants that we can eat. And it's just so much fun to pass on that knowledge. So when I was in school, though, I started getting this idea. I was studying science, but I wanted to really bring art and science together. I did a little bit of art, and there was just something that kind of clicked there. And I was like, how can I make these things come together? And I didn't really know how to do that. So I ended up working as a naturalist for a long time, which I loved, and I would bring art into my work. But it was sort of, just kind of give and take, and nothing really made it feel quite right. Until I started, at one point, I decided I wanted to paint murals. And so I quit all my day jobs, and I went out to become a mural artist full time. And I'll show you a couple of pictures here of a couple of murals that I painted during that time. You're probably familiar with this mural. This is the Olympia Rafa mural project, but during the first year, it was just this bare olive tree. In this project, I got to be involved in it and to finalize the design for this mural and to facilitate the painting of it on the wall. And I was just hooked after that. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is so much fun. I got to do a few really cool projects during that time. This is a painting that's up at Woodard Lane Co-housing in Olympia. And it was a lot of fun. And the projects were really great. But honestly, I just was not ready to be an artist full time. And I really completely failed. I failed at becoming an artist during that time. And I went through a really hard time. Like, I couldn't pay my rent, I couldn't pay my bills. And I did that thing that, I was kind of didn't really ever want to do, which was to take a job with Thurston County. I was afraid that if I got that, cushy desk job with the leave and the benefits, that I would never leave and I would never be able to follow my dreams. But of course, as things often go, I took this job, which was exactly what I needed to do. I needed stability in my life at the time. And I was working for Thurston County Solid Waste, teaching about the 3 R's, when the thing that I'd been trying to do all this time came together. I had this opportunity to do some programming, to create some programming around plastic bags. Actually, it was very vague. I could do it about anything, but it was during the time when our county was kind of deciding, going through that process of whether or not to ban plastic bags, the single-use ones. And so I thought, why don't we make a life-size gray whale out of plastic bags and other trash? And this seemed like a really logical idea to me, although it was very, very out of the box for the work we were doing. I pitched it to my supervisor, and I still don't know why, but she gave me the go-ahead to do this, with the caveat that I didn't get any money for materials, which was okay because I got paid for my time, and it was made out of 99% upcycled trash. I'm going to show you a picture of that. Some of you may have actually remember this. This was back in 2012, but this whale made quite a splash in the procession of the species. Anybody remember this going down the streets of Olympia way back when? So this project was all about combining art with marine biology, with the goal of reducing the use of plastic bags and other trash. And so I worked with hundreds, I think 900 youth and adults in our community to build this life-size gray whale. And I coupled that with presentations about the effects of plastics and what those effects how plastic can impact our oceans and our communities. And it was a really great thing. And I asked students to commit to using less plastic bags, and we gave them their own reusable bag, which at the time we didn't have so many of, so it was pretty cool. But kids participated in different ways. So I went into school, and I would ask all of the students to bring in their plastic bags from home. Y'all remember how back in the day, you'd have that big bag of bags stuffed under the sink or in the closet or somewhere. And it was just like, there were so many of them, you didn't know what to do with them. So I asked them to bring them in. And we would do this exercise where we would stand in a circle and they would bring their plastic bags, and we would take them all out. And it would create this huge fluffy mound of plastic bags. And so we would look at that and we would talk about how many plastic bags that classroom was using every day, and how many plastic bags the school was using, and the city, and on, to kind of get like an idea of how many plastic bags are actually being used and disposed of every single day. It was really powerful. And then the kids, they participated in different ways. So the elementary students, they cut and they braided these plastic bags. I must have taught 500 kids how to braid bags that winter. It was crazy. It was so much fun. They just like really, really got into it. It was really fun. And I worked with middle school students then to take those like 6,000 feet of braided plastic bags and make the skin of the whale kind of like making a rag rug. At the same time, I worked with a high school art class, and they had the opportunity to design the skeleton, which was visible on one side of the whale. And they used materials from their cafeterias. They used styrofoam, which was a mess, and I will never do again. And here's an image of the visible skeleton, which was in the midst of the Procession of Species celebration. But it was just so much fun working on this project. And it was really interesting because the students who were working on it, they only got to see this little piece of what they made, but they were invited then to come and see the piece in the procession and then also at the Washington Center after that. And so they got the opportunity to see the whole thing. I'll tell you, when I was walking down the street with this whale, at one point, this little girl runs out into the streets and she says, excuse me, did schools help to make this whale? And I said, yes. And she said, well, did my school help to make the whale? And she said, yes. And she literally like jumped up and down for joy and ran back to tell her parents what she'd helped to make. She was so excited. Her whole entire family came to the art opening to see the whale. And she was just glowing and alight with what she helped to create. It was incredibly beautiful. You know, what's amazing about using art in this kind of way is that participants were able to learn some really difficult things, right? Like nobody wants to hear about how plastic bags kill thousands of marine mammals every year, but they could hear about that and then they would immediately turn to making art, to taking action. And while they were doing that, they were actually able to process through some of those difficult emotions. And they were able to leave the project feeling inspired instead of depressed. And that was that piece of like really immediately taking action. I mean, if I had told them just the doom and gloom, which I think we get so much of today, without giving them and facilitating an action for them to take, they could very easily have been stuck in that place of apathy. And because this was a public art piece, we were able to take it to that next level, and they could actually become the teachers and share about the projects and have a way to tell other people about these things. You know, what we really got out of this was an incredible story, like really many incredible stories. And I'm just telling you really a very small part of this because there's so much that's left of it. But we got these great stories and people got the experience of creating something that was much bigger than any one of us could have done on their own. And this is, of course, so important with so many of the issues that we are facing today. As if the child running into the street wasn't enough, there were students. Oh, actually, I'm gonna pause for a second and step back. So this whale project actually helped to shift public opinion around plastic bags. There were a number of council members who invited me to bring the whale to their local city council meetings so that they could talk about it. And we didn't, because it was really hard to move this life-size whale. But it was cool that they invited us. And there were middle schoolers particularly who shared that they felt personally responsible for that ban on plastic bags when that went through. Like they felt that they did that. And when I heard that there were middle schoolers who felt like they could change the government, I knew we were onto something really, really powerful. I mean, I know when I was in middle school, I had no idea that there was any way that I could impact, the government, even as an older child or even as a young adult. Like, I don't even think I knew that until that moment. And so it really helps me to understand the power of this. Since this project, I have done a lot of other projects that use this kind of similar methodology, but I'm always trying to push myself to learn and grow and do things differently, trying to figure out like who I might be excluding in my processes. Right now, I'm really pushing myself to grow into that anti-racism work that is so important, and just, really trying to step into this work with my full self. So, I mean, I'd be kind of curious if any of you out there, if this resonates with you, if you have anything that you'd want to share about, like any growing edges that you're on right now, because I think that there are so many different ways that we can do work and impact, make impact as we're doing this. So please do feel free to drop things in the chat. Let me know if this is resonating with you or not. Excuse me. So I learned from this project that a bunch of things, really, that art really has this opportunity to break down barriers. It can open hearts. It allows people to see, if only for a moment, something that they had never seen before. And it can help people to understand the power of making something so much larger than any one of us could do on our own. And, of course, that is so important with climate change. And I'm gonna share a couple of projects specifically about climate change in a little bit here. But when I think about climate change, a word that comes to mind is transformation, societal transformation. I think that every single community-wide transformation that happens, it was brought about by hundreds of individual transformations. And to make change happen on like a global scale, which is what we're talking about when we talk about the climate crisis, we need to do things in a different way. And we need to have like hundreds and thousands of millions of us undergoing our own personal transformations all at the same time, right? Obviously I don't get to choose when anyone else is transformed. And in fact, I don't even get to choose that for myself. But I do believe that we can offer something that might help people to, open their eyes and their hearts in a new way, open their eyes and hearts to a new possibility. And for me, that's where the power of collaborative art lies. It gives us this means to opening hearts, to breaking down those barriers, which is just really, I think, what we need to be doing again and again right now. So after the whale project, I worked on a project still with Thurston County called Rise Above Plastics, the Butterfly Effect. And the title of this project references chaos theory, also known as the butterfly effect. And that comment, it's where a small change in one place can create a large change, like a huge change somewhere else. And the common example being a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the earth and can create a hurricane on the other side of the earth. So we created this really incredible installation. And I'm going to try to paint you a picture of this and also show you a picture while I'm talking about it. So imagine that you are inside of a 4-story atrium, in this case, the Washington Center for the Performing Arts. Below, beside, and above you, you witness hundreds upon hundreds of gently spinning butterflies suspended in midair. As they slowly turn, they reflect the lights. People were wowed by this installation. They were amazed, but they were still on the surface of it. As they looked closer and longer, sometimes for a few seconds, sometimes they would need to return multiple times before they saw more. But eventually they would see that the butterflies were made out of Capri Sun pouches. And they would see that all together, these butterflies created the image of a person inside of a butterfly chrysalis with their heart opening up and butterflies of change flying out of their hearts. When people saw that, they were absolutely shocked and astounded by the beauty. When they saw that imagery, they could no longer unsee it. But then they learned that each butterfly was made by a different person, a different child. And they were made out of all things, as I mentioned, Capri sun pouches. They learned that this piece was created by over 700 different individuals, each who was learning and talking and exploring about how their individual choices held power. And I saw in some people, I saw their hearts and minds transformed. You know, maybe it was only for that moment or that day, but maybe they were transformed in a way that they could never go back, never unsee what they'd seen. And of course, I was the one who was transformed the most. This project took nearly 4 months to complete. Not long after I'd started, but after I'd already committed and there was already promotion out about it, I lost something that was very, very dear to me. So while I was working with these 700 individuals who made the butterflies, while we were designing it, while we were installing it, I was going through my own personal loss and my own grieving, and I was learning to live anew. And so as I was working to create this art installation, I was also working to recreate myself. No, we are exactly where we are supposed to be. And we come into contact with the people we do because we need to. I mean, I firmly believe that there is a conversation that just those of us in this webinar today can have that nobody else can have in the world. And I would love to know what that conversation is. While this art installation and this whole art in action project, like, it opened up these children's eyes and the adults' eyes to see that they could be part of creating something bigger than themselves. It opened up the eyes and the hearts of the viewers that saw the finished artwork. It opened them up to new ideas, to be able to take new steps. But even through all of that, I think I was the one who was transformed the most. You know, facilitating that project while going through my own personal transformation and expanding my capacity to give back to others in the community, to my family, to this amazing planet. Like, it was like nothing else that I've experienced. I mean, to this day, if I go and see that installation, I just get so emotional. And ever since that time, I put a butterfly in every single one of my public art pieces. I'd like to share something that my collaborator, oops, wrong one, hold on, that my collaborator of the Butterfly Effect wrote to me. She wrote, as soon as I can actually see this, I will read it to you. I want to share with you, I'm going to make up this first part because I can't see it on my screen. I want to share with you how impactful this experience has been for me, life-changing even. I can begin to grasp how art transcends boundaries, opens hearts, and allows people to engage in this hard truth that we are all creating, all that we see around us, without fear and judgment. I saw people have the same reaction I did, with tears in eyes as they fathomed the level of commitment, creativity, community engagement, and the sheer translucent beauty of the art itself. I felt myself connected and sovereign, bathed in the light and the reflection of the gently undulating creation. That was Jennifer Johnson, who works at Thurston County Environmental Health. But I think that butterflies are such an amazing symbol of transformation, and that we are all constantly undergoing our own transformations, learning, growing, saying, no, I'm not ready, and then having to grow anyways because that's what the universe demands of us sometimes. But you know, when you look at this project and you look at your own personal work, like work in your communities, the work you're doing with native plants, like trying to create some kind of change, just trying to be your own authentic self, what do you think of? You know, what could you do differently to really connect with people's hearts? Because that's where the magic is. It's when we connect with each other's hearts. You know, what is it that breaks open your own heart? What could you do to help others to process through some of the difficult emotions that come up when we talk about climate change or loss of pollinators or poor water quality or whatever? You mean, pick a subject, right? There's so many out there. You know, what is it that you could do differently or more of, or maybe less of, to help to connect with people's hearts? You know, just something to ponder. If you're feeling brave and want to just put that in the chat box, please do, but no pressure. Yeah, it is so important that we have hope in these times. Thank you, Deb. So I did eventually leave Thurston County and become a full-time artist for real. And I've gotten to paint lots and lots of murals. I'm sure you've probably seen some of them around if you're from the area. I have a great relationship with the Puget Sound Estuarium, and I've gotten to paint lots of murals on their walls. This one is all different underwater and intertidal zone. It was a 2-year project. I've only got pictures of one half of it up here. But a couple years later, we did another project, and this was the first project the first large project I did that was really starting to focus more on climate change. There was a section of this mural which features local, like Puget Sound plankton, both zooplankton and phytoplankton. And there's another section I don't have pictured that really talked about how ocean acidification is impacting shellfish. But this project was so much fun to work on. There were lots of volunteers who helped me paint it. We had just a great time, and I got to do all this research, looking under microscopes and looking at different scientific drawings of these different plankton, and then making them huge. It was like really, really fun. I enjoyed that a lot. I wanted to share just briefly the pollinator project because it relates a little more closely to plants, which I know that you are all pretty interested in. I did this project with a group of students at Avanti High School, and they wanted to create an art installation in their new pollinator garden. And so we worked together. We brought in experts about bees, and we got to like dissect some bees and look at them under microscopes and draw them, and we did all kinds of fun stuff. And the students came up with this design, which later I created out of concrete called ferrocement. So it's concrete over a metal armature, and it's both beautiful and also practical and educational. So we inserted into the tree that we created habitat for mason bees, and you can see actually some of the little holes there filled in with little mason bee nests, which was pretty cool. On the back side, I did this really fun low relief sculpture of a bee on a sunflower. It was a super fun project. So I just want to take a little pause here before I jump into the real climate change stuff and just see if there are any questions that have come up. I'm just going to peek at the chat real quick, but I'm not going to spend too much time looking at that. So if there are any questions, pop them in there now. Otherwise, we'll have plenty of time for question and answer towards the end of this. So a couple of recent art and action projects that I've been doing over the last couple of years. I've been partnering with the Thurston Climate Action Team, which we'll call TCAT for short, because that's a mouthful. So I started working for TCAT literally 1 week before we all went into lockdown with the pandemic. And so in response to that, we, like everyone else, had to completely re-envision our work, how we were doing it, what we were doing. And what came out of that is the Chrysalis project, Transforming Together. And this project, I held workshops online with over 200 youth and adults. And in these workshops, we explored the power of art to create change. we really examined this critical moment we were in with the triple crises of the pandemic, a racial reckoning, and of course, the climate crisis. And we use a metaphor of what happens inside of a butterfly chrysalis as a caterpillar is transforming into a butterfly to help us to understand what we were going through, both individually and as a society. Like, this was really right at the beginning of the pandemic. We were all like, we don't know what's going on. Like, this was new for everybody. It was scary. There was a lot going on, you know? And so together we created these visions of what we wanted to be when we emerged from our individual and societal chrysalides. I asked people to paint visions of their future where they not only survive, but thrive. And they used all things they had at home. I'll show you a few of those here. So they painted these gorgeous pictures of what they, envisioned in this future where we could really thrive. And then I asked them to turn their papers over and write a letter. Now, during this time, we were going through a process in Thurston County that TCAT was really involved in, where the county, different jurisdictions were working together to create the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. And this plan was a very ambitious plan for us to reduce our emissions by 85% below 2015 levels by the year 2050. And there are some markers along the way as well. But this was a very ambitious plan, not a plan that was really easy for a lot of politicians to get behind because it could have been like political suicide. So as part of the Chrysalis project, everybody painted these visions and then they flipped their papers over, and on the back, they wrote letters to the local elected officials. And in these letters, they talked about where they were at, how they were feeling in the pandemic. They talked about what they were already doing to help with climate change and things they were committing to do in the future. And they asked, and in some cases demanded, that local politicians would take strong climate action to pass and implement the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. These were really powerful calls to action, and they impacted local elected officials greatly. I could tell you a bunch of stories about that, but I'm just going to share one story, and I'm going to show this letter again. So during the meeting of Thurston County commissioners, where they were deciding whether or not to adopt the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, one of the commissioners, Ty Metzner, stood up for his testimony and pulled this letter out of his pocket. He said that he'd been carrying it around for months as his guiding light. And then he read it as his testimony for why we should adopt the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. It was incredible. This was written by a high school climate activist. And I was so happy to tell her how impactful her words and her art had been. That night, the Thurston County commissioners did vote to adopt that plan and also to declare a climate emergency. In part because of this project, all 4 local jurisdictions did end up adopting the plan, and 3 out of 4 declared a climate emergency, which was no small feat. We made a video to celebrate this project, and it came out so beautifully. It's very short, and I had the honor of sharing it at the Olympia City Council meeting where they voted to adopt the plan as well. And I'd like to share that with you now. A butterfly must undergo an incredible transformation to reach its full potential. From egg to caterpillar to chrysalis. Inside of the chrysalis, the caterpillar's tissues melt into a virtually undifferentiated goo. What is left are what scientists call imaginal cells. each containing the blueprint of a flying creature. These imaginal cells are regarded as threats and are attacked by the caterpillar's immune system. But they persist, multiply, and connect with each other, holding the vision and working to become what they were meant to be. We are in the chrysalis of humanity right now, and it is hard. Together, we hold a vision of a future where we not only survive, but thrive. What if the frantic rush hours and non-stop consumer spending calmed? What if we spent more time in our gardens and supported local agriculture? What if we stopped funding fossil fuels and invested in renewable energy? What if we leveled the playing field so that we can all transform together? We are the imaginal cells. We are holding the vision for the future, a co-created future with healthy and vibrant communities, racial equity, and a strong economy. A future that is life-sustaining for all of us. What will you do to make this vision a reality? I love that video. I think that it does such a great job of sharing the emotion that was present in those workshops. We are in the chrysalis of humanity right now. We are in that imaginal goo. We are the imaginal cells. The pandemic, this racial reckoning, it gives us a glimpse of what we might face with climate change. From this space, from this place where perhaps we're afraid, maybe we're in emotional or spiritual pain, maybe we're having our own personal crises happen right now. They know they're going around. From this place, knowing that the impacts of climate change will be huge and huger still if we don't act now. From this place, I ask you, what do you want to see in our collective future? What will you do to make this vision a reality? I think that with everything that's been happening over the last few years, it really feels like it's time for each one of us to step into our own power, our own authenticity, and to share that power and knowledge with others in a way that honors both them and us. And leading and fully immersing in this type of project requires really a lot of vulnerability. And this project in particular felt really personal because we really were going through our own transformations at that time. And I think that, just creating and holding space for that vulnerability, that is essential for creating a world where we all can thrive. And I think that's one of the things that we can offer to others. But we, of course, have to be doing our own work too. The Chrysalis Project really focused on these grand visions of this future where we can thrive. And it had a really large impact on elected officials, but at the same time, it was a very quiet project and that kind of very behind the scenes. And that's very different than how things were in the project that followed that one, which is the climate justice mural project. And I'm going to wrap up with this project. So we're getting close to me quieting down here, just to give you a heads up. But so while the chrysalis project was really quiet and behind the scenes, the climate justice mural project was bold. And it focused on the tangible steps we might need to get to that future that we talked about with the chrysalis project. So TCAT and I wrote a grant to do this work, and it felt really important to me to write in stipends to hire other artists to be as a part of the design team. You know, I didn't feel like I could lead a climate justice mural project and have it be taken seriously on my own. Like I'm a very, you know, traditional white educated person, and it was a real great opportunity for me to share some of my knowledge with folks that, and then, you know, help share a platform with folks that are younger or maybe, you know, come from different and more underrepresented groups. So we ended up choosing 5 artists for this project. Let's see, I think I can pop up a picture of them here. These artists, plus myself, made 6. These artists were absolutely amazing in a project that was just filled with so many highlights. Working with this team was the absolute highlight for me. They are a very diverse group, all of us together, and we were tasked with co-designing this mural. And from day one, it was just incredible synergy that we had going on. So our overall goal was to design a mural that was solution oriented, that would really draw people in and, you know, help to like really use, you know, create imagery that would get people's emotion at the emotional level. And so, of course, with a project like this, we didn't want to design it even in this small of a vacuum, and we wanted to bring more people in. And so we had a public workshop to work on the design of this. And we ended up holding this workshop. This is right now at the workshop here, actually, this is where this picture was taken at Priest Point Park, and it landed on the hottest weekend on record. It was that weekend with the heat dome, and it was intense. You can see we're all like wearing tank tops and sweating. And it was really just auspicious. You know, we're having this workshop about climate justice, and it is so hot that there were people, this is probably my biggest regret, is that there were elders who had planned to come to this event who felt they needed to stay home to stay safe. And so we were actually experiencing climate injustice while having this workshop. But the workshop itself was amazing. Anyways, it was opened by a blessing from, oh, I don't have a photo of her, darn. A blessing from Candace Penn, who's the climate ecologist for the Squaxin Island tribe. She's a tribal member as well. And she opened the day with a tribal blessing and song, and it really just set the tone for the day. It was incredibly beautiful. And we explored climate justice together. Now, in a very, very small nutshell, climate justice acknowledges that climate change can and does have differing social, economic, public health, and other adverse impacts on underprivileged populations, for instance, elders. Each of the 5 of us 6 artists, we all shared our perspectives on what climate justice meant to us, and we had a really rich discussion with the full group. We broke into groups, 5 different groups, to focus on different sectors. So we had one group focusing on trees, one on buildings, one on youth, and there was also one on food and agriculture, which I don't have a photo of. And it was really great. So from there, the design team and I took all this imagery, this beautiful, beautiful imagery, and we looked through it, and we worked together to come up with just this design that we were incredibly, incredibly happy about. I want to show you actually a short video about the design process right now. It's very short, but I think it'll be nice because you'll be able to hear some voices other than mine. So let's see if I can get this moving. Climate Justice Mural Design Workshop. And this is all about bringing people together to talk about climate change, about. Let's see if I can let it load for a second, if it'll work better. Justice, what that even means, and coming up with imagery and words and ideas. A design for the mural that is, it asks hard questions, but also the hope is to create a design that really draws people in, that makes them say, what's this about? And how can I learn more? And how can I be involved in this movement?
I hope that it either catches their attention and makes them think about something that they could be doing in their life at the moment, or makes them think of somebody that they could talk to about just what they do in their life and how they can make the climate around them and their environment better for everyone that they know and love.
Yeah, so actually I have my daughter here because she's almost 9, and I feel like it's a good time to learn about climate justice literacy at any age. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but I think I want her to be versed in that language and versed in the knowledge, because it's her future. So I want her to know what's happening, but it would be even more amazing if she could be a part of it.
When we talk about climate justice, climate change, it's such an immense problem, like many problems all together, that we need more people working together to solve it. And so this project is one way to get the community together, to have conversations around climate justice, to look into finding solutions for this ginormous problem that we have, and create community while we're doing it. Okay, thank you for, I hope that got a little better when I turned my camera off. So we together created this amazing design, and it ended up being painted on one of the busiest streets in Olympia, which is Harrison Avenue, turns into Olympic Way, right going down to the lower roundabout. It's on a long, low retaining wall, and I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures of that wall and the painting project. And it was like so much fun. Okay, so this wall, about 26,000 cars drive by each day. I, of course, invited everybody to come and paint. We had a 2-day full weekend public painting party, and the design team was invited to come and be a part of that as much as they wanted to. And they all did come and take different roles in doing that. Many of them actually led different volunteers in painting different elements of the mural. We had so much fun. It was ridiculous. It was full. It was so exhausting. It was hard to breathe in some ways, but it was so much fun. There were people, honking and shouting positive things out the window all day long. These folks came in right off the street. They're like, "Hey, you're painting. Can we help?" And we were like, "Yes, please." It was really a wonderful, wonderful time. I'm going to share just a kind of the story of the design with you now. And so this is the lower half of the mural, and then this is the upper half of the mural. And there'll be process plus finished photos that are interspersed here. So the design really begins at that left-hand end with this strong brown fist. It is actually based on Imani Mava Childress's fist. He's one of the design team members. And this fist is holding a braid, and each ribbon in the braid represents something that we felt was important for climate justice to be had. So obviously we are talking about leadership from Black and Brown communities, Indigenous leaders, and the one braid represents the gay pride flag, another the trans flag, and the other racial diversity. And there's sort of a braided theme that goes through the entire mural. You can see Imani and Anna, who are both design team members, working there. The braids transform into this section that's all about green building and alternative transportation, alternative energy. And that part, solar panels, electric cars. I never did get bicycles painted on there. I really meant to, but there was a lot going on. Here's George Galvez and Darishma Alphonse working on the mural. And I was really just so happy to be able to continue to work with Candace Penn on some elements that brought in different tribal elements into the mural. We just felt like the roots in this section, we wanted to put some tribal imagery and ideas in here because we do really feel like Indigenous knowledge is so important now and always. And so the One Tree Root turns into a river with canoes going down it, and that's really meant to represent Indigenous people throughout the world's connection to water. And this poem that you see here is written in the language of Lushootseed, which is the language of the Squaxin Island tribe. Candace Penn gifted this poem to us and helped us to make sure that we did an okay job of transcribing it, because Lushootseed is definitely challenging. George wrote both the script in Lushootseed and in English. And the translation roughly says, I am thankful for this day. I am thankful for this life. I am thankful for my life. I am thankful for all things. Fix my mind, heart. Fix my body. Fix my life and soul. Make us one, and all will be right in this life. So be it. The roots here go around the corner and turn into the word climate, which is very rooty, and then turn into the word justice, which is very watery. And in the word justice, you can see some salmon jumping. There's a killer whale tail there. And then the water section transforms into a section about food justice. So each of these flowers is from a different edible or medicinal plant that we can grow in our area. Darishma led this section of the mural painting. That cute kid is mine. She kind of helps out on all my projects. And then the braided plants transition into a kaleidoscope of monarch butterflies and dandelion seeds floating off into the right-hand side of the mural. And it ends with a child's hand and a butterfly landing on the child's hand. And our idea behind that was that, what we're doing today, all of our actions, we are trying to gift future generations with a future where they really can thrive and be whole and complete. And the butterfly section was led very much by Karina Greenlee, who's a high school student and whom my kid loves very much. Underneath the climate section, underneath the butterflies, is penned a new land acknowledgement written by Jennifer Johnson, pictured here. Her and her kid Iris penned that on the wall. And it's really incredibly beautiful. So I'd like to read that to you now as well. She wrote, "Our future's children deserve hope transformed into action. May our ancestors witness our ability to create change, rippling forward and reaching back. We are the center, the change, the now. We acknowledge our responsibility to this land of the Coast Salish people. We stand in solidarity with all tribes, without whom there is nothing." And we know that a land acknowledgement is just a beginning, but it feels really great to have that on the mural. Painting this mural brought so much hope and joy to the people who were involved. And I felt like this was just so important, especially right now. in the midst of, the pandemic, and some people that came to paint, it was like their first thing that they went out to do with the public, and people's hearts just it was like their hearts just lightened up, and they got to be a part of something that really, I think, is quite beautiful. We're not done with that mural. I mean, the mural's done, but we're going to continue to do some things with it. I have some ideas around doing some poetry and things with folks. And I'm actually, with the Thurston Climate Action Team, going to be starting up an art and action group, Climate Art and Action. So let me know if you're interested in learning about that. We are in the midst of multiple crises, and the role of a crisis is to signal to the organism that incremental changes are no longer enough. We need big actions. And I'm not naive enough to think that one mural project or all of the projects combined are enough to change it all. But I do feel like it's a place to start. It's something to build on. I have worked directly with thousands of people making art about different environmental and social justice issues. Please do check out my website and, email me if you have any other questions. We'll have time for questions here as well. Yeah, just know that I'm continuing to do this, continuing to believe that we can create change, because I do believe that. The butterfly effect, it states that, a small change in one place can create a change that really, I think, we can't even imagine. So we really don't know the power of our own actions. And I've personally experienced transformation through this work and seen it in so many others, and that I believe in it and very much. So getting unstuck, getting out of that apathy that can grip us, that can grip me, really is all about taking action. And it doesn't have to be making art. There's lots of ways to take action in the world, but I've found that when I really do feel stuck, just doing something is, no matter how small it is so helpful. Going out and doing restoration work, I bet, feels amazing. So thank you all so much. I am going to turn this back over to Gail. I will say that I do occasionally send out a newsletter if you're interested in joining that. You can email me, or you could just put your email in the chat box and I'll save that later and make sure you get on the email list. Check me out on Instagram and Facebook, and otherwise, thank you for listening. I feel like I've talked for a long time, so I'm going to stop. And is Gail here? I'm going to assume.